Hey everyone, ready for another deep dive? This time we're exploring a classic, Awaken the Giant Within by Tony Robbins. It's all about how the decisions we make shape our lives.
Robbins goes way beyond just positive thinking. He lays out a whole system for understanding how decisions actually work and how we can use that knowledge to create change.
We're not just talking about those big life choices either. We'll be looking at how even little decisions can reveal a lot about us. You might be surprised, for instance, at what your decision about a bowl of cockroaches says about your values.
That sounds a little strange, I know.
Right.
But it gets to the core of how our decisions are driven by what we link to pain and pleasure.
It's so intriguing. I can't wait to dig into that. One of the things Robbins really stresses is that it's not our circumstances, but the decisions we make that determine our destiny. Like the story of Ed Roberts, he was diagnosed with polio at just 14.
What a challenge to face.
Right. Most people would see that as a huge limitation. But Ed, he chose a different path.
He totally did. Instead of dwelling on what he couldn't do, he focused on what was possible.
And he ended up accomplishing some incredible things.
He became a huge advocate for people with disabilities, helped create the very first Center for Independent Living, and even went on to become the director of the California Department of Rehabilitation.
It just goes to show that you can turn a challenge into an opportunity for change. Robbins drives home the point that your decisions have the power to change everything. Your relationships, your finances, your health, even your emotional well-being. So I have a question for you. What's one area in your life that you'd like to change by making a new decision right now? Now, getting back to Robbins, he has this core principle about pain and pleasure driving our decisions.
It's kind of built into us, right? We're wired to move away from pain and seek out pleasure, and that affects every decision we make.
He uses this example that everyone can relate to. Blue jeans commercials.
Those are so classic.
They don't always make sense logically, but they're really good at linking those feel-good vibes to buying a pair of jeans. Think about a recent purchase you made. What emotions were they trying to attach to the product?
It's everywhere. Fast cars, beautiful people, catchy music. They're selling you a feeling, not just a product.
So how can we use this to our advantage?
Robbins says it starts with awareness.
Becoming aware of what we associate with pain and pleasure.
Yeah, it's like bringing our autopilot decisions into conscious awareness. Once you see what's driving your choices, you can start making them on purpose, ones that match up with your goals and values.
That leads right into the power of beliefs, which Robbins talks about a lot. He says beliefs can literally make or break us.
He even argues that a strong belief can overpower the effects of drugs.
There's that incredible story about Marva Collins, a teacher in Chicago. She had these students that everyone had labeled as unteachable.
And she totally turned things around.
Yeah. She believed in her students so strongly that she was teaching them Shakespeare and classic literature.
Way beyond what people thought they could handle.
But her belief in them made all the difference.
Her students thrived. They actually started to believe in themselves, too.
It shows how much our beliefs shape our reality. Robbins gives us a concrete step here. Find those limiting beliefs you have and challenge them. And look to people who have the beliefs you want and learn from them.
Surround yourself with people who inspire you.
It's all about building a belief system that supports what you want to achieve. And this leads perfectly into Robbins' idea of Siana.
Constant and never-ending improvement.
Love it.
It's this idea that we should be constantly growing and getting better in every part of our lives. It's not about being perfect, it's about making an effort to improve a little each day.
And he's clear that this isn't some passive concept. It takes real commitment and effort. He even suggests picking one area where you want to apply Siana and writing down the specific steps you can take today to make it happen.
Make progress and celebrate those little wins along the way.
Robbins also points out that the questions we ask ourselves shape how we think and feel and act. He tells this story about W. Mitchell, this guy who suffered severe burns and then survived a plane crash.
Talk about resilience.
I know, right? But instead of focusing on what he'd lost, he asked himself these really empowering questions.
Like, what can I do now? What's still possible? He focused on what he could do.
It's incredible. So Robbins encourages us to look at the questions we ask ourselves all the time about our money, relationships, health, whatever it is. Are they helping us or are they holding us back?
Yeah, it's all about making sure our internal dialogue is on our side.
Now, this is where things start to get really interesting. Robbins introduces the idea that metaphors actually shape our reality
They're way more powerful than we think.
because they carry so much emotional weight, right?
Uh-huh.
Like, think about the difference between feeling like you have the weight of the world on your shoulders versus feeling like you're dancing your way to success.
Gosh, different pictures,
Okay.
right?
They create totally different feelings.
Yeah.
So Robbins encourages us to pay attention to the metaphors we use and to challenge the ones that aren't helpful.
It's about choosing language that empowers us.
Now, I know we've been talking about some pretty deep stuff, but what if we looked at our emotions in a whole new way?
That's where action signals comes in, right?
Yeah, Robbins suggests that instead of seeing emotions as negative, we should think of them as signals, like they're trying to tell us something.
It's a total reframing. Instead of trying to avoid our emotions, he wants us to use them. They're messengers giving us valuable information.
He even goes through different action signals and what they might be trying to tell us, like fear. That might mean we need to prepare more. Hurt could mean someone's crossed a boundary. Anger could show us that our values have been violated.
Instead of labeling them as bad, ask yourself, what's this feeling trying to tell me?
That's a really refreshing way to look at those emotions we usually try to push down.
They're not the enemy, they're trying to guide us.
So the key is to figure out what the action signal is trying to tell us and decide what needs to change, whether it's how we see things, what we're doing, or both.
Taking responsibility for our emotions.
Absolutely. And then Robbins dives into something he calls transformational vocabulary. It's this idea that the words we use shape how we actually feel. Like, there's a big difference between saying, I'm furious, and I'm a little concerned.
The words we choose make a difference.
They do. So he wants us to be more mindful of our language and choose words that empower us.
And help us de-escalate negativity.
Exactly. Now, we're about to get into the core of Robbins' system, what he calls the master system. It's where he connects all the pieces we've been talking about.
It's like our internal operating system.
Okay, so think of the master system as how you evaluate the world. It's made up of your values, your rules, your references, and your identity. And it's this system that ultimately shapes your decisions and, as Robbins argues, your destiny.
Pretty powerful stuff.
He breaks it all down, piece by piece. He even tells a story about this CEO who had unknowingly linked pain to his passion, which was really messing up his relationships. And the interesting thing is,
It shows how stuff we aren't even aware of can be sabotaging us, even in areas that seem totally unrelated.
right, and that's where understanding our values hierarchy comes in. Robbins says that our values guide our decisions. So if we want to feel truly fulfilled, we need to know what our values actually are. He has this really relatable story about this woman, Jolie, who landed her dream job at Disneyland, but ended up being super unhappy because her values didn't match up with the work. It shows that.
Success isn't just about achieving your goals, it's about finding something that feels meaningful.
It's got to match up with your values. And then Robbins dives into this idea of rules, those unconscious beliefs that tell us when we should feel a certain emotion. He gives this funny example about a CEO whose rule for success was just waking up above ground.
So simple, but it makes a point.
Right. Our rules can be totally arbitrary, often based on old experiences or beliefs that we've outgrown.
But they're still running the show.
Exactly. So Robbins wants us to identify the rules we have about love, success, money, everything, and ask, are these rules helping me or holding me back?
Time to take inventory of our beliefs.
Now get ready for this mind-blowing concept. The power of compounding.
Like compound interest.
Yeah. It's a financial principle that Robbins applies to personal growth. He explains that if you keep reinvesting your profits, it leads to exponential growth over time. And he illustrates this by,
Folding a napkin.
I know, it's so simple but effective. He folds it over and over to show how small, consistent efforts can build up to huge results over time.
It really shows the power of consistency.
I love that. Now, tell me more about this code of conduct idea that Robbins introduces. What's that all about?
It's about consciously choosing the emotional states you want to experience every day, no matter what's going on around you.
So it's about taking charge of your internal state.
Exactly. Robbins even shares this story about choosing to be cheerful at an airport bookstore, even though his flight was delayed.
It shows we always have the power to choose how we respond. But how do we actually do that?
Well, Robbins says you need to create your own code of conduct. Pick 3 to 5 empowering emotions that you commit to feeling every day.
It's like a blueprint for your emotional state.
Exactly. It helps you stay on track no matter what life throws your way.
So powerful. Okay, I think we've covered a ton of ground in this first part of our deep dive. We've looked at how our decisions shape our lives, the power of beliefs and values, and Robbins' unique concept of action signals.
It's a lot to unpack.
It is, but it lays the groundwork for understanding how we can create real and lasting change in our lives.
Ready to keep going.
Absolutely. I'm ready to dive even deeper into Robbins' system for personal transformation.
So Robbins, he then jumps into this really interesting idea about mastering time.
Okay, mastering time.
Yeah, he highlights how our perception of time is relative. It's influenced by where we put our focus.
Time is so fascinating to me. It feels like some days just zoom by and others just crawl. Is that what he means?
Exactly. It's all about how we experience it, not just the clock. And he introduces this tool, it's called the rocking chair test, to help us make decisions that align with our long-term goals. Imagine you're older, looking back on your life. Would you be proud of the choice you're about to make?
I love that. Such a simple way to gain perspective. It's like having your wiser, older self giving you advice.
Right, and just when you think he's covered everything, Robbins drops this super inspiring section called The Hero Within.
Oh, yes. This is one of my favorite parts of the book. It's so powerful. So what's his message about the hero within?
He challenges this idea that problems are permanent, and he does it by telling these real-life stories of everyday heroes. And I'm not talking about superheroes with capes, but regular people who show incredible courage and compassion. Like, he talks about a janitor who saved a child from drowning, and a woman who donated bone marrow to a total stranger.
Those stories are so inspiring. They remind us that we all have the potential for heroism to make a difference.
Exactly. You don't need superpowers to be a hero.
So true. So we've covered a lot so far. The power of decisions, beliefs, emotional mastery, the master system, everything. What are some of the key takeaways you want to emphasize before we move on?
I think what Robbins is saying is that we have so much more control over our lives than we think. We have the power to choose our beliefs, our values, our actions. We can choose our destiny.
It's all about taking responsibility and shaping our lives in a way that aligns with what we really want. Now, Awaken the Giant Within is full of these actionable strategies and inspiring stories that can help us create a more fulfilling life, right? But there's one piece we haven't fully explored yet, Robbins' breakdown of the master system and how each part affects how we make decisions.
You're right. That's a big one. Ready to go deeper.
Absolutely. I want to hear more about how our values, rules, references, and identity all work together. Where should we start?
Let's start with values. Robbins explains that values are like our internal compass. They guide our choices and shape the direction of our lives. And he makes a distinction between what he calls moving toward values and moving away from values. Think about it like this. Moving toward values are the positive emotions we want to experience, like joy, love, success, freedom. Moving away from values, those are the negative emotions we want to avoid, things like fear, rejection, failure.
So it's about understanding what drives us, both what we want to achieve and what we're trying to avoid. That makes sense. But how do we figure out which values are actually most important to us?
That's where the values hierarchy comes in. Some emotions are just more important to us than others. It's like a ranking system for what really matters.
So someone might value security and stability over adventure and risk-taking, while someone else might prioritize freedom and independence above all else.
Exactly. And what Robbins emphasizes is that our actions need to be aligned with our values. If we're living in a way that contradicts our core values, that's when we feel conflicted and dissatisfied, like we're off track.
He says that when our actions and values match up, that's when we feel peaceful and fulfilled. Okay, values are just one part of the master system. What about rules? What do they do?
Robbins says rules are like these unconscious beliefs that tell us when to feel a certain way. They're like internal triggers that determine how we respond to things.
Can you give me an example of a rule that might be affecting someone without them even realizing it?
Sure, like imagine someone has a rule that says, I need to be perfect to be loved. That could lead to them setting impossible standards for themselves and always feeling inadequate. Or someone might have a rule that they need to please everyone to be liked, which could make them overextend themselves and neglect their own needs.
Those were great examples. It's crazy how these rules can operate under the radar, messing with our emotions and behaviors. How can we become aware of them and start changing the ones that aren't helping us?
Robbins says, pay attention to your emotional reactions. When you're feeling a strong emotion, ask yourself, what rule might be triggering this? Once you identify it, you can question it. Is it really true? Is it helping or hurting you?
It's about bringing those unconscious beliefs into the light so you can make conscious choices. Okay, so we've talked about values and rules. What about references?
References are the experiences we draw on, both real and imagined, to shape our beliefs and how we see the world. It's like our mental library.
So our references could include things like childhood memories, relationships, books we've read, movies we've seen, even the stories we tell ourselves about who we are.
Exactly. And Robbins is saying that our references can be incredibly powerful in shaping our reality. He uses the example of Roger Bannister, the first guy to run a mile in under 4 minutes.
Oh yeah, he broke that mental barrier that everyone thought was impossible.
Right. And once he proved it could be done, others started believing they could do it too. Soon, everyone was running sub 4-minute miles.
One person's breakthrough changed everything.
That's the power of references. So Robbins says we need to be mindful of what we're exposing ourselves to. Seek out inspiring people, read books that expand your thinking, learn from people you admire.
It's like curating a mental diet for yourself.
Exactly. And finally, we come to what Robbins considers the most powerful force in our lives, our identity.
Identity, that's a big one. What does Robbins say about how our identity affects our decisions and our destiny?
Robbins says our identity is the story we tell ourselves about who we are. It's all the beliefs, values, and experiences that we use to define ourselves. And the important thing is our identity isn't set in stone. We're creating and recreating it all the time through our choices.
So it's not just about who we are now, but who we're becoming.
Exactly. And that's pretty powerful. It means we can change, we can evolve, but we need to be aware of the stories we're telling ourselves about who we are and what's possible for us.
I'm really curious about how we can consciously shape our identity to match the life we want to create. What does Robbins say about that?
He says start by taking a look at your beliefs about yourself. What stories are you telling yourself about what you're capable of, your worthiness, your potential? Are those stories helping you or holding you back?
It sounds like it's about challenging those old stories that might be keeping you stuck.
Exactly. And then it's about choosing a new, more empowering story. It's not about pretending to be someone you're not. It's about aligning yourself with the best version of yourself.
Stepping into the person you want to be.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that might mean changing your habits, your behaviors, the way you talk to yourself, the way you interact with the world.
This is powerful stuff. It seems like understanding and mastering our master system is key to creating lasting change.
It is. And it's just one part of Robbins's amazing framework for transformation.
And this is where things get really interesting, right? Now that we have a better understanding of how we make decisions, how our beliefs, values, and identity all play a part, I'm ready to hear more about his techniques for actually creating emotional change. Okay, so we've talked about how our decisions, our beliefs, even the stories we tell ourselves shape our lives. But what about our emotions? How do we deal with the ones that seem to hijack our best intentions? Robbins dives into this idea of emotional mastery.
Yeah, he has this really radical approach to emotions. He wants us to stop thinking of them as negative. Instead, he says we should see them as action signals. They're messengers trying to tell us something.
Like a new language for our inner world.
Exactly. He actually breaks them down, those action signals, and what they could mean. Like fear, that could be a sign that you need to prepare more. Hurt might mean a boundary's been crossed. Anger could be showing you that your values have been violated. Don't suppress those feelings. Try to understand them instead.
It's a big shift, isn't it? Seeing these emotions we usually try to avoid as something valuable. But how do we actually do that? How do we become the master of our emotions instead of letting them master us?
Robbins lays out a 6-step process for this. First, you have to recognize what you're feeling.
Just name it, right?
Exactly. Then you acknowledge it, appreciate the message it's trying to give you.
So instead of beating yourself up for feeling a certain way, you just accept that it's there and try to figure out what it means.
Right. The next step is to get curious. Ask yourself, what's this emotion trying to tell me? What needs to shift? Is it how you're seeing things, what you're doing, or maybe both?
I like that, getting curious. It's like turning your emotion into a puzzle to solve instead of just feeling overwhelmed by it.
Exactly. Then, once you think you understand the message, you need to get clear about what you want to feel instead. What emotional state are you aiming for?
So instead of dwelling on what you don't want to feel, you focus on what you do want to feel.
Yeah. Then comes believing you can actually change how you feel. It's about trusting yourself to shift your emotional state, to move from feeling powerless to feeling empowered.
That sounds like it takes a lot of self-belief.
It does. And finally, get excited and take action. Robbins is big on this. Knowledge without action is useless.
You have to put it into practice.
Yeah.
But how do we actually change how we're feeling? What tools does Robbins suggest?
He gives you a whole bunch of techniques. One is to change your physical state, like your breathing or how you're moving. Our bodies have a huge impact on our emotions.
Oh, I totally get that. If I'm feeling stressed or anxious, taking a few deep breaths or going for a walk can completely change how I feel.
Exactly. And he also talks about the power of shifting your focus. What you pay attention to shapes how you feel.
Right. If you keep thinking about negative stuff, you're going to feel more negative. But if you focus on things you're grateful for, things that make you happy, that can shift your emotional state to a more positive place.
Right on. And then there's asking empowering questions. Like instead of asking, why am I so stressed? Ask yourself, what can I do right now to feel more calm?
Just changing the question can make such a difference.
It can. Robbins gives so many practical ways to take charge of your emotional well-being. Remember that rocking chair test we talked about?
Yeah.
That can be really powerful for making choices that align with your long-term goals and bring you a sense of fulfillment.
And how does that code of conduct idea fit into emotional mastery?
Remember, that's about intentionally choosing the emotional states you want to experience every single day.
No matter what's going on around you.
Yeah, it's being proactive about your emotional states.
It's like creating a plan for how you want to feel.
Exactly. Pick 3 to 5 empowering emotions, things like joy, gratitude, confidence, peace, determination, and make a commitment to cultivate them daily. That code of conduct becomes your guide, reminding you how you want to feel and helping you course correct when you get off track.
I like that it helps you stay consistent. This reminds me of that section on the hero within. How does that connect with emotional mastery?
In that section, Robbins challenges us to stop seeing problems as permanent. He shares stories about everyday heroes, regular people who faced huge challenges and made a positive impact on the world. Remember the story about George Bush Sr.?
Yeah, he was shot down over the Pacific in World War II.
He was in the water for hours, clinging to a life raft, surrounded by sharks. It's a pretty amazing example of courage and resilience.
It's incredible.
And those stories remind us that we all have that heroic potential inside us. We have the strength to face our fears and make a difference, and that ties in directly with emotional mastery. When you learn to manage your emotions, you tap into that inner strength and resilience. You can face challenges with courage and compassion.
It's like we all have that hero inside waiting to be awakened. We can overcome anything and create a better life for ourselves and everyone around us.
That's it. That's what Awaken the Giant Within is all about. Recognizing your own power, mastering your emotions, and taking action.
Wow, we've covered so much ground. We've explored the power of decisions, the importance of beliefs and values, and how our master system shapes our reality. We even learned some awesome techniques for changing our emotional state. What a journey.
It's been great to really dive deep into this book. Robbins' message is all about empowerment. He reminds us that we have so much more control over our lives than we think.
We have the power to choose our beliefs, our values, our actions, and ultimately our destiny.
It's a powerful message. I hope you'll take it with you.
If you're ready to awaken the giant within yourself, I highly recommend checking out Awaken the Giant Within and putting Robbins' principles into action.
And remember, personal growth is a journey. Keep exploring, keep asking questions, keep striving to create the life you want.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into Awaken the Giant Within. We'll see you next time for another exciting exploration into a world of ideas that matter.